Okay, here we are with the Art of Mindful Medicine. I am Dr. Seth Gilson, your host, and as you all know, I'm a biological dentist, certified yoga teacher, and speaker. And I have a very special guest with me today, who his name is ANDREI RAM. And as always, I'll give you a brief intro, and then we'll jump right into things. So ANDREI is a man known as a yogi. He travels the world teaching and sharing the virtues of yoga he learned from his guru. Kindness, patience, humility, fortitude, humor, selfless service, ahimsa or non-harm, unconditional love, compassion, and an understanding for all. His teachings are grounded in classical traditions, which embrace all aspects of the science of yoga, from the physical to the esoteric. ANDREI, thank you so much for being on here with me today. I've been looking forward to this for some time now. I always like this to start these discussions with gratitude. So if you could please share with me and us the three things that you're grateful for today.
Seth, great to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Three things to be grateful. Well, first of all, for me, divine human gift is consciousness. So that will be my first thing to be grateful for, consciousness. Second is consciousness over the breath, which is consciousness over our living experience down here on Earth. And the third one is family love. It's Christmas. I have two kids. They're getting excited with the season. So, of course, having the love of the family around, amazing thing to be grateful for.
Couldn't agree more. It's beautiful. So a couple of things that I said in your intro here, a couple of words, yogi and guru. Can you maybe tell us what those things mean from your perspective?
Absolutely. Well, yogi first, whoever practices yoga and whoever practices yoga daily and whoever have found in yoga a way of living and a way of sometimes surviving in order to be able to really experience to have the full conscious experience of this human living. That's what a yogi is. Someone that is devoted to the yoga practice and that use the yoga practice as the main tool for this living journey. And guru, it's funny because it's a very heavy word. And actually, we have put so many definitions to what guru is. But the very simple definition of what guru is in the Sanskrit is heavy, actually. So something that is really heavy provides you with that support. So guru, actually, we tend to think that as a guru as a very important thing in the spiritual journey, but actually it's important in the sense that it's something that support your process while you are able to walk by your own. So that's what guru is the one who assists you until you can walk by your own into the path of self-realization.
Gotcha. All right. I appreciate that. Thank you. So before we get more into yoga and yogis and the teachings that you do, I want to jump back in time a little bit to you and who you are, where you came from, what life was like for you growing up. Can you touch on a few of those highlights for us?
Sure. Well, I was born in Massachusetts, but then my family moved down to South America, to Colombia, where I was pretty much, I grew up there. And then years after I came back just to also to raise my family here down in South America. So actually the experience of having two citizenships is, I really appreciate that because we tend to identify it with aspects like cultures. But when you have the opportunity to be raised in two different cultures, that kind of like to give you it's kind of like assist you to have a more open mind and in the sense of the kind of perspective towards reality. So I'm really grateful for having that experience because as I said, I really feel that this way you don't see things in just one side or one color. That enables you to like really start seeing that life is multicolor, that the touch and the gift of humanity is also diversity, and it is diversity. I think is one of the main capacities of humanity. So it's and then also in the perspective of yoga, unifying instead of the division, also give you this chance to bring together into your personal process also different perspectives of life, and to have a value and an appreciation for difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. The people that I meet on a daily basis in my my work practice, I just find that people that are either from elsewhere or grew up in multiple areas or travel a lot have a much more open mind about life in general, and how things can coexist.
Exactly.
So, what are some memories that stand out for you from your childhood?
I belong to this first generation that started to be massively labeled, in the sense of my pretty much, when I started to learn English, my family moved down to South America, where the language is Spanish. So my brain was already understanding English, and then just when I was about to start speaking, then I have to start switching. So that took me a while to actually to start developing my language skills, and this also brought a different way of interacting, and also a different way of perceiving. Um, so actually, as a child, in my childhood, I remember, like lots of silence, lots of contemplation, because like I had to like wait a little bit until I can kind of like bring together the words until I start speaking. So one of the memories that I really hold really clear from my childhood is a lot of silence and contemplation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. As I'm learning more and more Spanish now, um, it's it sometimes there's like just a delay between when the words go in my ears and to when my brain actually processes what was just said. And it's the other thing I find fascinating about language. It's not a direct translation from word to word. Yes, sentences are structured differently, but also in different languages, whether it's Spanish or Chinese or Russian or whatever, the words and the way they're said have a different meaning. You can say the same word in three different ways in some languages, like Hebrew and stuff like that. And I just think that's just it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's not just like a linguistic difference, it's also the difference in the sense of cognition. It's so interesting to see how different cultures perceive things in a different way, and then sometimes we think that it's just a matter of finding the equivalent in sense of the words, but as a matter of a fact, sometimes you realize that it's just a totally different way of perceiving reality. So of course, and then to add also the way we use the tongue and the phonetics, it's so different between different languages. So that also adds a little bit of difficulty, but also, again, like a space of patience, a space of silence, and a space of contemplation and perhaps consciousness before you dare yourself to speak.
Exactly. So, moving forward in life for you, what was your introduction to yoga? How did this journey start for you?
Well, as I said, I think these early memories that brought lots of contemplation as part of my way. It's I now I see that it's has a lot to do with and then later on these steps in my life when I found yoga. Also, as a teenager and early in my early 20s. I had this time when I moved from Texas down to Colombia, and I mean, Texas, you're underage, you can do anything. Then you come here to South America, and with 18 years old, you can just enjoy all the wildness. So actually, I started working in a bar for like 2 years. And after those 2 years, I was just like sick of all this, the party and the craziness. So I moved back to nature, found a little hot cottage in the mountains, and I started spending my days there. And then I developed kind of like a natural way of meditation. So I think that's what's kind of like my first approach to the yoga or to the Eastern traditions of spirituality, even though I didn't know at the time what I was doing. But this was pretty much kind of like my initiation into these practices. And then later on, here in South America, as you know, there's lots of the indigenous culture is very alive, and it's always kind of like it's very integrated to the national culture, and you always have access to their wisdom, which is very much related to the wisdom of nature. So I also had kind of like the guidance of these elders from the indigenous tradition, and they led me also to understand that my way was also through the body and through movement. And because of this guidance that I received from them, then I started dancing. And maybe about a year after I was dancing, I had my first kind of like encounter with the actual yoga practice and the physical yoga practice, the more the asana practice, and then kind of like I think adding this experience with the asana practice, but in the ground that I already had of this kind of like natural meditation, this just totally brought, like kind of like my familiarity towards it, and identifying that it was so much part of my own nature.
Beautiful. And were there any initial like lessons that came to you through the start of your practice?
To the what? Sorry?
Like any lessons that you learned through that transition, making from working in a bar to moving out into a cottage and kind of finding spirituality? What were some of those first lessons that you learned about yourself?
Well, I think the link that we have with nature, like we Westerners, we have this education where kind of like they show humanity as we are above nature, and that we are kind of like the intelligent beings on this planet, and that nature is just it's something that we can own, and that we are above nature. So I think in that period of time in my life, I learned that that's not true, that we belong to nature, and that we cannot own nature, and actually that nature is the most precise and pure divine scripture. All the sacred scriptures that we have, and at some point has been manipulated, or at least interpreted by human mentality. Instead, nature is divine creation. And when we contemplate nature, and when we integrate to nature, and when we learn directly from nature, which was what I did during those years, then you start kind of like not just to realize the divine path, but you are also kind of like to start building up a relationship with the divine without even knowing, when you actually build a relation with nature.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny, see, when you say nature, and it's just a natural connection, because like you're saying, we are nature. Nature is us. So it's just like that divine connection that you're talking about. I can completely relate to. So that's a beautiful process. Thank you for walking us through it a little bit. So through that contemplation, I think another term that comes into play there is mindfulness. And what does mindfulness mean to you?
Well, it's very interesting because, I mean, of course, I come from I received a 10-year training in the very traditional classical yoga practice, and in the Raja path of yoga, which, as you know, is pretty much the practice of the 8 limbs of yoga, well known as the Ashtanga. So when you receive this training, you understand that mindfulness, it's a practice that was developed by the Buddhist tradition. And when you see this kind of like, where does mindfulness goes into these 8 limbs of the Ashtanga yoga, mindfulness actually is related to dharana. It's not related to dhyana. As nowadays we when we think about, or when we talk about mindfulness, we think that is equal to meditation. But since I have like this kind of like very classical training, mindfulness is all the practices that are related to dharana. Dharana sometimes is often defined as concentration. I like to relate it more to the process of focusing the mind. So it's actually, mindfulness is all the mental training that enables you to actually go into a state of mental calmness that enables you to connect to consciousness. When you connect to consciousness, and when you perceive directly from consciousness, that is what is meditation. So mindfulness is a very important training for the mind, and especially so that the mind can develop their highest capacity, which is not to process, but is to perceive, is to to perceive consciousness. So mindfulness is kind of like prior to mindlessness, kind of like we can say that even meditation is mindlessness. Of course, it's maybe the easiest or the more direct is just to mind, the calm mind, right? But mindfulness goes with dharana, all the techniques in order to gain, I don't like the word control, but to really learn how to take advantage of the capacity of the mind. But again, the most important capacity of the mind is when the mind is calm, because then mind can perceive consciousness. And then that leads to meditation, which is the state of calm mind, or we can even say the mindlessness state.
No, thank you. That's a beautiful description and rundown of it. So some people might find that somewhat overwhelming. That idea of perceiving rather than thinking constantly. And how do you introduce this sort of practice to someone that is new to this concept of mindfulness and yoga and things like that?
Well, I think we think that nowadays the world is so much under control of a system of beliefs, and the main thing that is now creating this system of belief is actually knowledge. There's this philosopher that said that I don't know the right words, but it's that we exist because we think, right? And if we see the development of our Western mentality, way of perceiving, way of producing knowledge, it's all based on thinking. But if you see, beyond this Western philosophy, you see that there are ancient traditions and there's ancient cultures that develop a different kind of wisdom, that it was not based on thinking. It was way more based on perceiving. And actually, it's not true that because we think we exist, because we can see nature again, plant kingdom, we can see animal kingdom, we can see the newborn babies that they express so much bliss, and they haven't developed yet the actual thinking. Their mind is at state of mindlessness, and even though they're that state, they're more alive and they're into full expression of what life is and existence is. So I think there's kind of like a little additional challenge for the Western mentality to approach these Eastern traditions like mindfulness or like meditation, because we think that everything is all about thinking. And if we see the mind, the brain, the actual brain, the brain doesn't produce anything. The brain processes everything, but the brain actually is not the one that is producing, and actually is not even the one that is perceiving. The brain is part of the nervous system. At least this is how we see it in the Eastern tradition, right? And then, of course, it might be one of the main centers, but the more essential thing is the nervous system, that actually the animals, they also have it, and it is the nervous system the one that perceive. And then, of course, in the humankind, then we send everything to the brain, and the brain is the one that process everything. But we think that is from thinking that we create. Thinking is just processing, but this information has already arrived to the nervous system, and in this interaction is when we can also contemplate or develop these other capacities. And to talk about, for example, creation or the creative aspect, the creative action, that's something that doesn't come from the brain. Again, the brain processes everything, but what creates will be even more basic. Maybe it's more related to desire, and of course, here in the Eastern tradition, we say like it's related to the Atman, to the real self, to the real self, to spirit. So spirit is the one that generates, right, and uses all our systems, physical system, mental system, energetic system, and then integrating all of that is when we start to produce and to create, right? So the mind just plays actually we can say actually it plays a small role in the whole picture of existence. So my way, how I start, introducing all this, first of all, is just from the practice, just guiding the people through these Eastern techniques to a state of calm mind, right? And then realizing how you are more aware and how you can perceive even more when your mind is calm. So kind of like as a consequence of the practice, then is when we can introduce easier, what mindfulness is, what meditation is, right? But in the Eastern tradition, everything is based on the practice, actually. First you practice, and then you have some material to then reflect upon the practice. So this is pretty much, kind of like a little introduction of how we approach all these practices.
Yeah, this idea of perceiving versus processing is actually really kind of beautiful to think about. And the way you're putting it is really, really nice. It's about awareness and creating more awareness.
Exactly.
And the awareness of that perception is something really special. And like you said, the asana practice or the poses, the physical practice of yoga is what from my perspective, what I see all in the Western world, so to speak. And the way I learned in my training is that part of the practice is just to get to the meditation.
Exactly.
And I feel like that's where there's a little bit of a disconnect between what's actually happening and what yoga and mindfulness really is.
Exactly. Well, Seth, sadly, we have to talk about like, nowadays we tend to create businesses around everything, and products about everything. And also, in the spiritual world, we also, there are so many products, and then there's so many things that they are labeled as yoga or as mindfulness, but they are something totally different. I mean, yoga is not about doing a physical exercise, and mindfulness is not just about hearing someone telling a beautiful story with a beautiful book, telling, calming your mind, but taking you into a world of illusion. As you said, mindfulness is about awareness, and that's a key word, because when your mind is busy, you reduce awareness. But when your mind is calm, that's when your mind develops the greatest capacity, which is actually what you just said, awareness.
Yeah, the two words awareness and presence are what really kind of bring that home for me. And as an example of this, what I use to kind of help to think about this myself and describe it to other people is, if we're busy in our day doing something and we forget what we just did, we're lacking awareness. It's like when we get home and we put our keys down and 5 minutes later, we don't remember where we put our keys. We're not present. We're not focused in the moment. We're not aware of what we're actually doing in the moment. And I mean, I know that happens to me sometimes. and it's just a really good example for me to kind of put that into a real life situation.
That's a great example, actually, because like we actually, I don't think it's based on memory. In the yoga tradition, like it's yoga. The definition of yoga is calming the mind, right? Yoga's chitti-vritti nirodha, bringing the mind into a state of calmness, right? And then there are 5 modifications of the mind that if you don't stop these mental fluctuations of the mind, then you end up identifying with the mental stuff. So actually, one of these 5 fluctuations is memory, and they say like some of these fluctuations creates suffering, some of the others don't. But memory is actually the one that creates more suffering.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so interesting what you're saying in this example, because when you're aware, actually you don't have to relate in memory. You are aware where you put the keys, and it's actually like the same awareness will just go and get the keys without having to even without having to go to the mental process, and without having to go through the memory, right? So this is so interesting, this example that you're putting, because that's what awareness is. It just put you into consciousness, into awareness, and you're aware where things are, even without the need of using memory. And actually, I think this is something beautiful to share, because in this world, we freaked out so much about the brain capacities, and we freaked out so much about memory. Like there's this the Alzheimer disease. How many people suffer not just because of the disease itself, but because of the negative way we see disease, and the negative how we judge things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But actually, you see it in the Eastern tradition, like kind of like Alzheimer, like a conscious Alzheimer is a stage preview towards a samadhi, towards enlightenment. When your mind is not present, you are more in the present. You are more in the present, and you don't suffer because you are not attached to the past, so that you can fully live the present. So actually, like if you see this, the higher state of samadhi is very similar to a very conscious Alzheimer. Of course, we live in societies that it could be a trouble forgetting things, right? But if we flip the coin and if we see what's the positive aspect of lacking memory, I think even, talking about Alzheimer, we would have the ability to guide and to direct these processes that they call disease towards a different way of experiencing.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny, I've never really thought about it that way with Alzheimer's. I suppose if we, as a collective whole, were to kind of change our perspective and our outlook on the negativity surrounding that, of course, I mean, it can be devastating when a mother forgets who her children are and things like that. But if we just look past the emotional attachments that we have to those things and just kind of support that presence in life, I think we can find beauty in that as well, like you're saying.
And also creates a different type of perspective, a different type of connection. I give this example because, I had the chance to live several years having my two grandmothers. One had such a sharp memory, and she was always sad. She was always suffering, every time I was going out to international travel, she was so sad. Oh, I don't know if I'm going to see you again, how long is going to pass. And I have my other grandmother, that she had kind of this, type of beginning of a type of Alzheimer. And the funny thing is she was always happy, she was greeting me, and then she turned around, and in 3 seconds she forgot that I was there. So when she turned again towards me and she saw me again, she was happy again of seeing me. And yes, sometimes, it's not like maybe she forgot my name, but the level of connection was always surrounded by a certain type of bliss.
Yeah, that's a good word. Bliss or nirvana, and that happiness. It's almost as if the default state is that, because like you said, she would turn around and come back, and it's almost like there's a reset and she's happy again. And that seems like that's the default state of the soul or of consciousness, right?
Yeah, that's actually a perfect state of mindfulness and awareness.
Yeah.
To be at the, as my teacher says, Dharma Mitra, be established in the eternal present, because at the end, present is the ultimate reality. Past is already gone, future is not here, but present integrates everything, past and future, and it's all about the experience of living. Is all about living reality, is living the present.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So I feel like this is already what we're talking about, but you used the phrase science of yoga. What do you mean by the science of yoga? And I feel like this is part of what we're already talking about is in that space, but can you kind of create some clarity about that phrase and what you mean by it?
Well, again, we don't realize, but there's so much discrimination and judgment nowadays, and especially when we talk about truth and we talk about the official, right? And so talking about science, what is science?
Science.
Science, what is not science, and if it's not the official science, it doesn't. Not we see it nowadays, in the last years, there's so many scientists that they are really engaging to the real science, which is really getting to know about the unknown and not about proving what we already know. So actually, to me, that's the key thing about science, and the nature of science is always pursuing for what we don't know. But if in the moment that science is established in statistics, and then science is established in hypothesis, then you are already kind of directing, the rest of the process of science. And that's, to me, that's what kills science. So science, basically, the whole principle of science is just seeking for the unknown. And that's why I like to call yoga as science, or at least that's the perspective that I have, because it's not based on a system of belief. And of course, yoga was a big influence to many religions in the Eastern tradition, like Hinduism and even the Buddhism. Of course, Buddhism is a little bit different because it's a bit more scientific than any other religion. But anyways, at some point it becomes a religion, right? But the whole thing of staying in the stage of yoga in a more scientific approach to the yoga practice, which is like really using the practice in order to get to know about the unknown of your own self, right? Because this is something beautiful about this science of yoga. It's not trying to get to know about what's going on in the universe, what's going on in a different galaxy. Is first you have to get to know what's going on in your own galaxy, in your inner world, in yourself. And first you have to like really get into a scientific process of getting to know the unknown about yourself. And that's how you grow up into self-knowledge. And then after you have grown up a little bit into your self-knowledge, then you expand your awareness and your consciousness, and perhaps that also expand your understanding, or at least your perception about also the outer world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. You said one of the book I just am wrapping up reading about yoga, one of the parts he says, in order to know the world of the many, you have to, I mean, this isn't a direct quote, but in order to know the world of the many, you have to start with yourself, because of that deep interconnectedness, like you were saying, with nature, with other people, with everything around us.
Exactly.
So what's the point of yoga, essentially? I mean, when people hear this term, they I know where their mind immediately goes to. It's like a headstand and bending backwards and things like that. But what's the point of yoga? Is there a goal? And kind of what makes it different from the Western mindset of just other forms of stretching and exercise and things like that?
Well, first of all, whatever I will share with you all about yoga is not my personal perspective. You have to understand that yoga is a collective process, and it's a collective human process. This is an ancient practice. Literally millions, and I could say even billions of souls have practiced yoga along these, like thousands of years. So it's beautiful because it's not based on on the ultimate truth that someone is putting into there. No. It's something that we keep developing. Any yoga practitioner is also adding and contributing to the whole expansion and the evolution and the development of yoga itself. So knowing that this is a collective process, this is the beautiful thing about the lineage, that is something that you receive the principles to practice, then you start practicing, then from your practice you start to add and to contribute also to the yoga practice. So what I received from my lineage, from the million of souls that practiced before me, that at some point, I was fortunate enough to receive, this collective integration of all those years, and then it was put into my hands, is that the purpose of yoga is supreme self-realization. It's not about, we may think that it's about, some people that are not too familiar to yoga, or that think that is just kind of like a physical exercises, that might think that is just a physical exercises to acquire good health. The funny thing is that when the perspective towards yoga is just as a mere physical exercises, that is what we're seeing in this modern world of yoga, that is actually creating injuries, when the yoga practice should not create injuries. Should actually be the starting point of a self-healing process. But you cannot develop a self-healing process unless you don't know yourself, unless you don't know your body, unless you don't develop listening to your body, perceiving your body, learning from your body, learning from your system, what's right, what's wrong. So it's all based, all these processes are all based on self-knowledge, getting to know about yourself. So the ultimate goal of yoga, and then other people might think that is enlightenment, but enlightenment is also one part of yoga, it's one limb of yoga, as we see it in the Ashtanga tradition, in the Raja yoga tradition. But the actual goal of yoga is supreme self-realization. And it's very interesting because it's not just self-realization, it's supreme self-realization. So it's just it's kind of like developing this desire to get to know about yourself and your nature, that it never stops. So it continue. It's like I don't think that anyone can reach the supreme self-realization, but by putting supreme, that puts you into a process that won't have any end. And this is one of the mistakes actually of the practice, and we see it even in the classical practice. People, practitioners, that they have reached a state of enlightenment and say like, okay, I'm enlightened right now, so I don't have to practice, I'm going to chill out. And then they fall. And the problem is, when they fall, many followers that should not be followers should be seekers, they fall with them. But when you really put this thing of supreme, that means that we're humans and that you will never reach there, so you have to continue endlessly until the day you die, and perhaps beyond. Right? So it, to me, is not just that supreme self-realization, is getting to realize the ultimate and the absolute. It's just that you stick to the process of self-realizing, of self-learning from yourself, from your soul, from your spirit, from your body, from everything, from your existence, until the day that is the end, at least this physical experience. Of course, through this practice of the inner world, we start to perceive that this is not, like the physical is just a temporary state, and that for sure we have glimpses and touches through the experience and not through beliefs, that the spirit will move beyond this physical stage.
Yeah, you described that in a really interesting way, because there's been many, I'm going to use the word guru because that's what they've been known as, who kind of rise to this popular following. And like you said, these people are meant to be seekers, not followers. And just like you said, they rise to this position somehow, and then they fall, and then everything else just falls around them. And I've had this fascination, and I used to have this disappointment around those things. But listening to you talk about it, it's that supreme self-realization. It really, that makes a lot of sense to me.
In order to engage into a spiritual process, one needs to be very skeptical. And I think that if skeptical, to be skeptical is the principle that leads to develop faith, but not a type of faith that is based on a belief, but a type of faith that is based on the accuracy of something that has been experienced over and over and over and over, to the point that it leads you to the point of realization, that that if you do this thing, this will be the outcome. But in order to reach this real faith, one needs to be highly skeptical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely relate to the skepticism. And as you said before, the guru is that which guides a seeker to become their own guru, in a sense.
Exactly. And I will say not even guide, I will say assist.
Okay. Yeah, assist. Exactly. So you related yoga to a religion before. And I think this is a big confusion for a lot of people. I mean, it's my understanding you were raised Catholic. I was raised Jewish, but we both practice and live through yoga in our own unique ways. So what's your view, and how do you discuss yoga being a spiritual practice and not a religion, and kind of what's the difference between spirituality and religion? Because that's another issue for people that can be somewhat combative.
There are many religions, but there's just one spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever is seeking for the spirit, that's spirituality, and you can seek through a religion or not. But if you're really a seeker of the spirit, that is what spirituality is. And again, you can use many different paths, and of course nowadays, like, religion is kind of like the main offer, but it's funny again, because I had like kind of like this diverse multicultural setup that also helped me to see these things. I actually, yes, my mom was Catholic, but my dad was evangelic. But also we had like there was like these the Jews that they were kicked out of Spain thousands of years. So actually, I have my dad. He knows the Torah better than my Jewish friends. So, and then, like, and my kids and myself, we were brought to a rabbi on the 8th day, for circumcision. So somehow I have like this mix always in my life, that it didn't allow me to like just stick to one vision, and just always to integrate. And this, I think, this was a very fertile ground for me to also develop my own way and my own spirituality, and to realize that, kind of like, to me, every religion is kind of like a piece of a puzzle. But if you really want to see the full picture, you need to integrate each and every of these parts of this puzzle. And this is something that has been very interesting throughout my life. I've been to Israel, I've been to many sacred places, and I've been also to Muslim countries. I've been in a mosque, and meditating in a mosque is like, oh my goodness, like, I think that the Islamic tradition, the teachings of the Islamic traditions, they are so high that it's not for everyone. It's just for certain people, and that's why they can use them to manipulate people easier, because it's very complex, what this tradition is really talking about. But sadly enough, again, everything is in the hands of religion. Everything is in the hands of men, exclusively men. And it's so interesting, because in the Islamic tradition, I don't think that they will ever get the message in this tradition, unless the one who will hold the tradition will be the women and not the men, because the men, they get everything totally wrong. They don't have the awareness and the consciousness to understand what this tradition is about. Instead, the ladies that stays at the back of the mosque, they are the ones that are developing contemplation and awareness, while the other ones are doing the blinded rituals.
Mm-hmm. The blinded, repetitive rituals of just reading or memorizing over and over again.
Exactly. So again, it's just like, as I said, there are many paths. I think that the essence of every religion is a spiritual essence, but sadly enough, it's been under control. Like, I mean, look at the Jewish tradition. Like, I have talked to like very esoteric rabbis, and they said, like, it was at the beginning there were 7 commitments, but they didn't get it, so then they have to add it into 10. But nowadays, you think that along the history of the religion, from 10 became 100, from 100 then became, I think nowadays is 1,000 or so on. And again, this is just, I know that I'm not accurate into this, but I had also the fortune to interact with so many spiritual and religious leaders, and from that really true seekers from different religions. And it's so beautiful to see that, when you really go to the essence of every religion, you see that there is the seed of spirituality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually completely agree. And I've, in very different words, described it the same way to other people, because I feel that, like you said, there's one religion. There's one spirituality, and different practices of that branch off from that, and that's kind of where religions seem to have come into play. Mm-hmm. And another book I just finished reading, it's actually called The Immortality Key. I think you might really find that interesting. That the so-called gatekeepers of the original religion, so to speak, I mean, we're going back to like ancient Greek mythology, were women. And like, just to hear you say what you're saying is just fascinating, because of all the things that I've just this past week started reading and learning about, and it's just really interesting. And you've mentioned your teacher Dharma Mitra before. I also know another teacher of yours, Pio. How have they impacted your views on life and yoga and spirituality? And I mean, bringing this back to also religion, specifically, Pio and I have had a pretty significant discussion about religion, spirituality, ayahuasca, and yoga, and how these things kind of all come together. So how does that fit? How do those pieces come together for you?
Well, before we go into that, I have to add, like, we don't have to go to the ancient philosophy to realize that we all are women. I mean, we just have to go back to our mother womb and
Yeah.
to the biological development, to realize that, you know, up to the 15th, 18th, 20th week, we all are X.
Mhm.
Then either the X mutates to become Y, or we remain X. So we all are women, you know, and this is actually very interesting about, for example, Christianity, you know, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. When the Christianity came to America, to the indigenous people, they freaked out. They said, like, this cannot be possible.
Mhm.
Cannot bear life to another man, and then apart from that, you killed your god, you know. But when they presented the image of Mary, then they say, like, oh, okay, of course, now we got it. Even God has a mother, you know. Because, and then we see it then in many religions, the female aspect of divinity is hidden.
Mhm.
And it's not even hidden, it's judged as something that is mundane, and no one can develop spirituality, self-realization, and self-realization about the divine, unless one first perceive the female aspect of the divine, because this is the seed aspect, and then the other one mutates to express and to expose. So I wanted to add this, and then also this give me also the chance to talk about, like, this again, you know, the teacher, which I call it guru because I feel comfortable, because I know what guru is. You know, like nowadays we just like to make things fancy, and we like to look for answers in others, and for others to give us the answers and to guide us. And this is not, you know, like, if you really go to the essential spirituality of the East, of the Eastern traditions and of the yoga, as I said, you know, guru is not, as they said, is the one that guides you from darkness to light. All this is just love, you know. Guru is just heavy, it's just the one that is assisting you so that you can find your own realization. So I'm so glad, you know, because I had the assistance of Dharma, which is, I call him the king of humbleness. You know, what I learned from him is about humbleness. You know, it's like it's funny, you know, there's this thing that they call, there's a power yoga, there should be a humble. Because power is just powering the ego. It's totally the opposite.
Exactly.
But, you know, I had the example, the living example of seeing Dharma, you know, and how he's been able to develop his self-realization actually through a practice, deep practice, based on humbleness. So he's not a character that tried to guide you, that tried to, you know, say, like, oh, look, I'm the great guru, and you just follow me. No, he's always promoting you and inspiring you to look for yourself, to do not bite the beliefs, but to really go and look, go and practice. You know, like he said, like, I'm here to teach you the practice. I'm here to but the practice is the one that is going to teach you. So I'm just guiding you into the practice, but check it out. He's always saying that you have to check it out. So on one sense, you know, like this, I'm so fortunate by having this, you know, like this opportunity to having someone like Dharma, who from the very first moment that I start practicing with him, he was saying, like, hey, this is not about me. You know, this is about what you find inside, and what the practice is going to help you to find inside your own. And then Pio was very interesting, because I found Pio, which I don't call him a teacher. I call him more a medicine man. Like, we can say a doctor, but doctor. It's like kind of like, you know, what's his title, you know. So it's more kind of like a medicine man, and actually that in the tradition is like that, you know. It's they hold the wisdom of this medicine, that is a medicine for the soul, actually. And of course, is based also on neuropathic path, because it's all about, you know, knowing the plants, and how the plants can help us to heal things from our emotions, from our mind, and deeper from our soul, right? So I found Pio when I left Dharma after 10 years, and it was great, because it was kind of like a way of, he helped me to see things and to find things beyond this pattern, this yoga pattern that I was so used after 10 years to use as the one and only tool to look for all my answers, you know. So again, he brought me also to this kind of like childhood stage, what I have also touched with indigenous tradition, and that is nature. Nature is the one that is teaching you. What is the ayahuasca? Like nowadays they have done it in a very ritualistic way. But ayahuasca is just a plant, and it can be used in a positive way or in a very negative way. But when you use it in a very positive way, this plant enables you to see within yourself. People think that they think that they take ayahuasca and they are tripping out and they are seeing hallucinations. Whatever you see when you take this plant is something that is inside of you. The thing is, like, we don't know that language. We don't know our own language. But whatever you're seeing, you may think that it's a jaguar, and you say like, oh, but what is a jaguar have to do with me? We all have all these images inside, and we also have like the archetypes of the animals. For example, the hunter animals. So of course, ayahuasca comes from the jungle, so it has the language of the jungle. So for example, if you see a jaguar, it's because it's activating your desires. And what we are as humans is hunters of life, hunters of desire, hunters of purpose. So this plant heals you and start to bring you all these images of, for example, of wild cats, because we all should recover our hunting awareness on life, how to hunt for the things that we want. So it was so wonderful, to find this medicine man at that stage in my life, because it also helped me to integrate. Yoga is tricky because it's foreigner. At least the way is foreigner to us. And the beautiful thing about indigenous, and this is something beautiful to share for the American fellows, we talk about the fathers of the nature, but we are not going to heal as a nation unless we start talking about the grandfathers and the grandmothers of the nation. And those were the ones who were holding the land for us to come and to create this nation. And if we don't integrate the ancient tradition of the indigenous American people, which are the true Americans, not because they were there first. No, not because they were first. No, just because they developed a culture based on listening the nature and the quality of North America. And North America, as you all fellows know, is all about abundance. It's all about generosity. It's all about diversity. And all these indigenous people from North America, that was their culture. The culture is not something that they created. They were just listening to our land. And it's time for all Americans to start listening to our land. And the way to listen to that is by listening to the speech of the Native Americans. And I will invite all of you fellows to start reading with a different eyes, listening with different ears, the speech of the Native Americans. And when they will talk about the white man, chill out. They're talking about the foreigners that came at that time. But there's not such a thing of white men. There's just, you all are Americans. And it's time for us to start listening to our land. And we have this assistance, that is listening to this. You can call it indigenous philosophy, but it's not a philosophy. It's the speech of the North Americans, is the speech of the North American land.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have really much to add to that, but there is something really truly sacred about the indigenous North Americans. I had the opportunity to grow up knowing some of the Seminole tribe here in South Florida, actually, and there is just this different energy and essence about them for whatever the reason is, like what you're describing, and it really is important to integrate all of these things. And that's what I've gathered from plant medicine, specifically ayahuasca, is that integration into oneself.
Integration. That's what we need. I mean, come on. United States of America. Hello. United States of America. Let's stop with all this bullshit of dividing ourselves. It's there. United States of America, integrating the States of America, integrating visions, integrating difference and diversity. Come on, difference is what makes us greater. It's not what makes us enemies of each other. And it's time to start seeing difference with different eyes. The great capacity of humanity is diversity.
100%. It's like you just said, and you said it earlier too. Diversity is key. I mean, that's how nature progresses. That's evolution. That's how things have progressed over millennia.
Yeah.
That's how we came to be. So
we think that is by defeating the others. No. Coming together, guys.
Exactly. So I want to shift a little bit into your practice and your teaching. And my understanding is that one of the main focuses is something you had mentioned earlier, is breathwork. And if you could share some of your knowledge around breathwork, and like, for example, like nasal breathing versus mouth breathing, the benefits of the different forms of breathing. Is it something that people should practice every day? Do you do the same type of breathing exercises every day? How do you approach teaching these practices?
Well, actually, the yoga is a huge ocean, and sadly enough, we think that when we learn yoga, we need to know about everything, a little of everything. And it's not like that, you just get into the practice, and the practice just takes your own motivations and your own tendencies and will guide you into a very specific corner of this big ocean. So actually, the corner that the practice brought me is the corner of pranayama, is the practice of breathing, the practice of breathing. And then again, it's the gift of humanity is consciousness. So consciousness amplifies. Everything is there. But when you add consciousness to whatever you do, you amplify the good and the bad. But of course, when we talk about life, is the most essential thing about life is the breath. Just think about it, like, either because you have to go through a tough experience or because you engage into these crazy pranayama practices or yogi practices, there are people that they've been living years without eating any food. There are people that they've been going out through months without drinking water. But how long a human being can last without breathing? The world record is 11 minutes. I mean, and of course, this is just basically just like really how much they can hold the breath. And of course, this is the people that go into free diving, right? But 11 minutes is counting, inhaling, holding, exhaling, and then also holding without air. But if we think about like how much you can last, just breathing out completely, and then how long you can last, I will think that the world record, they haven't tested there, and I will be very happy to be part of this experiment. To go into, I'm not into competition, but I would love to go into that, because just breathe out completely, and see how much you can last, and not just how much you can last, but how much you can last with wellness. So it's key. I mean, it's there. The breath is there, and the whole process of the creative aspect of divinity is in the inhalation, the transformative and purification aspect of divinity is in the exhalation, and then in the holding is kind of like the aspect of preservation, right? So the breath is the most essential thing in our life. And to me, whole spiritual practice and the yoga is also based pretty much on breath. I call it breath-based yoga, just to put a name. I don't really care about names. But anyways, just to give an idea of what my approach to the practice. And my approach to the practice is all about the breath. If you improve the way you breathe, that's the way you start to improve the way you live. It's the key thing of life. So, of course, in the yoga tradition, the actual pranayama, it says like, all the techniques should be done through the nostrils, through the nose. Of course, the nose is part of the respiratory system. The key part is the diaphragm, that is the one that enables us to breathe. The lungs cannot breathe. The lungs processes the breath, but the one that enables us to breathe is the diaphragm. And in the diaphragm is the location of the solar plexus, which is a center that integrates many nerves, way more than even the upper brain, as we call it. So in the just to give you some keys so that you can have some practical things, so to you fellows that are listening here and following here, is like, I will just suggest you like start bringing lots of consciousness to your breath, and start bringing lots of consciousness to the movement of your diaphragm instead of to the movement of your lungs. And that automatically start to increases the quality of your breathing. And again, you'll see that then the quality of your mind, how you're perceiving everything, start to improve as well. So of course, the nostrils have a very important role. Now we're entering into winter, so the nose, they filter temperature, they filter particles. So of course, this is the proper way of breathing. Now, there are kind of like a special chapter of certain breath, and especially of exhalation, that it uses the mouth. Why? Because the mouth is not part of the respiratory system. It's part of the digestive and the phonetic system. So the second one, even more important, because there are certain things, especially in how we expel things, how we release things. So inhalation brings life, oxygen, however you want to call it, prana, right? And then exhalation is what starts to remove the waste, whatever, that's the most important purifying method that we have, naturally purifying method, exhalation. Conscious exhalation is already inducing lots of purification. But there are other things, because we are multidimensional. We're not just physical, biological, we're also energetic, we're also mental, emotional, and of course spiritual, that we need other ways to release from things that move beyond the biological, beyond the physical, like emotional releasing, for example. So that's when you integrate the phonetic system. So when you integrate exhalation through the mouth, that's how you can release emotions. And again, this is something that we always do, like try to cry without exhaling, try to laugh without exhaling, try to shout without exhaling, try to bitch out without exhaling, and all these are methods to expel out, to release. So again, bring the peace, bring the human gift, bring the peace of consciousness, and do it with awareness. When you are releasing, when you're exhaling, when you're using your mouth to release an emotion, and then of course that will amplify your releasing and your expelling ways. So next time that you are crying, exhale at the same time with awareness, exhale at the same time that you're crying. And then you'll see that this is really going to release whatever emotion you're releasing. And even when you have anger, like anger is an amazing energy. The thing is, like, it's because it's so loud and so intense, usually we don't have the chance to control it. But if you bring the piece of awareness and consciousness, make sure that you are not harming anyone, right? But find a place where you're not harming anyone and beach out with awareness and with consciousness, and integrating exhalation to your beaching out. And then you'll see that it's an amazing tool to release something that we really need to find a positive way to release, that is anger and anger management, of course.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. That was great. So bringing awareness to our breath, and I use this at the office. I mean, bringing awareness to bringing people's awareness to their breath is a magical tool to use. But are there any, say, specific breathing practices that you start with people, like that you would have someone start on, or is it, how do you gauge like what kind of breathing practice you teach?
Again, to me, like we try to think, we try always to find what is the most advanced, what's the best, what's, like I think was Einstein, the one that used to say, like, any stupid, anyone who is stupid enough to use their intelligence can create something that is complicated. Someone really, really wise to create something that is simple. And it's so interesting because, we need to seek it for the most simple and essential things, because those are the ones that are way more important. So I always, start to integrate the basic practice, yoga practice, breathing practice, which is, we call it the complete yogi breath, which is using the what we call the three tanks and all the diaphragms. The main diaphragm is the one that is around this region, lower ribs region somehow. Then the lower, the secondary diaphragm is the one that is around the throat, right? So it's all about, bringing the people into the experience of really using your diaphragm and using all the space that you have below this diaphragm to fill up with air before you start filling up your lungs, right? And this is kind of like the basic principle to start inducing into what we call the complete full deep breath, right? So then it's interesting because the lungs capacity is quite limited. When you develop the capacity to fulfill below the diaphragm, you double, triple, and even by 5 times, you increase your breathing capacity, your capacity to gather prana, oxygen. So this is the thing, this is the technique how I start with people, just to help them to develop the complete breath, to bring the air first below the diaphragm before bringing the air into the lungs. And this is how I introduce, I think like we really need to start realizing the complete full deep breath, realizing that we don't breathe from the lungs, we breathe from the diaphragm. Seth, I was, you can't imagine how many places I traveled during the lockdowns, with the exception that, I was under the exception that I was going to teach breathing techniques for people with COVID. And it was just this, it was just teaching the people like, hey, like if your lungs are affected and you're trying to breathe from your lungs, first of all, you can't breathe from your lungs. Lungs are affected and you try to breathe from your lungs, that creates a lot of anxiety. And this is disturbing, is just gonna, you're gonna collapse. So just the very simple thing about, breathing from where you really breathe, that is the diaphragm, teaching the people how to breathe consciously from the diaphragm, it was already, making a big difference. Things that, like, I think it took me like 2 years to the official protocol to realize, from the very first beginning of the lockdowns, we were teaching full deep breath using the diaphragm and putting the people to breathe upside down when their lungs were affected. This is something that if you have a cold, if your lungs are affected, your throat are affected, you always go upside down. Why? Because then gravity helps you to release, and then infection is not pushing into your lungs. It's kind of like gravity is another amazing force that we don't use, and is there to assist it in a very simple way, in a very useful way. So, just to give you like these keys to the people, like really, before you bring the air into your lungs, make sure that you're bringing as much or pulling as much air as possible below your diaphragm.
Yeah, and definitely work on these things before you start trying to do it upside down.
Oh yeah, unless there's the case of an emergency. And then the other thing that I would like to add is just, if you have fear, try to blow away instead of just exhaling. If you have and if you have guilt, spit it out, because guilt is something that doesn't even exist. It was something that they induce into our mind, to amplify the negative aspects and the negative emotions. So fear, you blow it away, but guilt, spit it out. don't even give an exhalation to it.
Yeah, no, it's really great how you talk about breath, and I see a lot of similarity in how I've spoken to my patients about it. And breath is life. I mean, life starts with the breath and life ends with the breath. Exactly. And to be able to bring our conscious awareness to that during our life is really special, because that's how, I mean, I tell patients conscious breathing is how we speak to our nervous system. And in essence, speaking to the nervous system is kind of speaking to our inner self, or our soul, in a way. Exactly. So, and you started to talk about different energetic points and in the breathing. And that brings me to the large and confusing topic of chakras. So, what are chakras? Are these real? I hear a lot of different opinions. There's 7, there's 11, there's 72. I mean, take away.
Think about the inner world, and then the sciences, different sciences. No, I just don't want to say one. Different sciences, different approaches to the study of the inner world, is that it cannot be based on knowledge. You cannot measure, like in our Western science, we measure everything, and if you cannot measure, then you cannot prove it, right? But in the inner universe and in the inner sciences, it's not based on measurement, it's based on quality, it's based on experience, right? So actually it's so beautiful to see different approaches that they don't fight. Some might say like, oh, there are 9 chakras. Others say like, oh, it will be 13 chakras. Others going to say 7 chakras. Same thing with the inner channel. They say like, sometimes they say there are 72,000. Others say like 360,000, right? Because it's approaches to bring a better sense of how you cope, of how you manage life. It's not about knowing. It's not about knowledge, it's about the sense of living instead of the information or the knowledge of living. And it's so interesting because, nowadays we have lots of information and knowledge, but there's lacking coherence with life. Instead, when you go instead of measurement and you go with quality and you go with seeking for the sense, then what you improve is the coherence towards life. Right, and the coherence of the things that you are realizing through your experiments, self-experiments, or through the knowledge itself. So the chakras, again, it's so beautiful to see, like, people, some they say 9 because they also have like a different approach, different way of perceiving, also kind of like adding 2 chakras that move below the physical structure, but pretty much, if we talk about the 7 chakras, even though some will say like there are 9 or 13, they all will acknowledge the 7. They just add up more. So I think, again, going with the basic is more simple, and to me, simple brings more coherence and more sense of things. So, but the chakras, I think that what we should do is we should burn all the books about chakras, because you can talk about something that is beyond the mind. So in the yoga, we have a structure that is based on 5 levels. First, the physical structure conformed by whatever number we have nowadays, 4.2 billion of cells. Then we have the energetic system. In the Chinese tradition, the 90,000 meridians, which is the crossing point of these nadis, energy channels. We like to go with the approach of 360,000 channels. Then we have the mental system, and the most important channels of the mental system is the very famous Ida and Pingala, the solar and the moon, the channel that enables you to perceive towards the outside, and the lunar that enables you to perceive towards the inside. And those channels are the one actually that in the yoga tradition end up creating the bipolar brain, which actually we all are bipolar, but when you are in a monopolar society, it's very risky to be bipolar. So anyway, so then in the mental science, in the mental system, we have like 36 channels. And then we have the system of consciousness. So we think that the mind is the one that creates intelligence. In the Eastern tradition, or in our approach, is when the mind can perceive consciousness, then the mind can create intelligence. But intelligence is a product of the consciousness, not of the mind. Okay, so then we have a system and a structure that deal with consciousness, and those are the chakras. So sometimes people say like, oh, chakras are centers of energy. Everything is energy. Your cells is energy. Everything is energy. So of course the chakras move a lot of energy. Why? Because those are not centers of energy. Those are centers of consciousness. So it's kind of like, we can say, just to put it into kind of like related to the way we perceive, we can say that those are like 7 different type of brains, 7 different type of intelligences. And every of these intelligences, every of these consciousness enables you to perceive and to interact with a different aspect of reality. So we have a multi-dimensional reality. So they are a center of consciousness. You can say that center of intelligence for each of these dimensions of reality. So the easiest way is just to go with the 7. Of course, anyone that have an idea of this can understand why some people, why some other approaches, they talk about more than 7 chakras. But the 7 are kind of like the basic ones that enable you to interact with the 7 levels of reality: physical reality, energetic reality, sensual reality, interacting reality, non-physical reality, and integrated reality, to put it like that. Up to 6, I went there the seventh is all about kind of like bonding with the cause, the cause dimension, the dimension of the cause. So chakras are kind of like, are those centers of consciousness, and we all have them. It's, you can take a pendulum and you can see where the chakra is located. And even though we know it's just like, we don't, so how many people don't know that they have a liver, and yet the liver is working and is processing whatever has to be, whatever is has to process, right? So it's the same thing with the chakras. We don't need to know that they are there, we don't need to acknowledge them, but they are doing their work. And again, when you add the piece of consciousness, then you amplify the function of these centers. Likewise, when you add awareness to your liver, when you add awareness to these centers of consciousness, then of course, then kind of like activates whatever they are already processing.
Mm-hmm. And it creates a flow of energy, essentially. Once you've I guess brought awareness to these different levels, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Bring awareness. It's interesting because in the Eastern tradition, they talk a lot about the third eye, right? And it's like, oh, when you activate your third eye, that's when you reach samadhi and enlightenment. And it is not like that. Each of the chakras, they have to be, first of all, each of the chakras has to be activated, or at least from first to sixth, in order to activate the third eye. So the third eye is kind of like a one that integrates. It's not just kind of like, it's not a special one, it's the one that integrates. That's why it might be a special. It's like the sixth sense. The sixth sense is not an additional sense. We have five senses. When you harmonize the five of them and you make them work as a team, as one, without any one of them ruling, then this is what the sixth sense is the interaction sense, the five senses. So it's the same thing with the sixth chakra. It's kind of like when you are able to harmonize and to integrate the five, then it activates the sixth. But the point is that all the chakras are really important, and every chakra brings a certain type of enlightenment. And nowadays, actually, the lower chakras are the one that we need to develop more, because those are the one that we have lost. First chakra is the one that enables us to connect with female divinity, which is nature. If you have enlightenment of the first chakra, you won't need any nutritionist or any test to let you know that you are allergic to something. The intelligence of your body will totally repel certain foods and so on. The enlightenment of the second is all about limitless hope, because the second is creativity. So if you develop limitless creativity, just think about all the disasters of life, losing a job, losing whatever, you will have the ability to somehow create this, if not this thing, this process that enables you to do this relationship with this or that other thing. The enlightenment of the third one is the one that brings order to the whole, especially physical system. The enlightenment of the fourth is amazing because it's the one that enables you to materialize, not because you develop an esoteric power of materialization, but because we are humans, and this is a collective dimension. And when you have the enlightenment of the fourth, you are able to identify and to have cleverness about all your relationships. And you will identify someone that this is the one that I have to do business with this one I should not be doing business. This is the one that I should be develop a family with or a partnership with in any aspect, not just emotionally. It's just the enlightenment of the relationships. And when you have your human network complete, that's it. To put it in a funny way, you won't need any banks. I bought myself a beautiful house with the help of many friends, not by donation, but with interaction, the people are in different fields, so we need to take advantage of this collective network that humanity is. And this is what the fourth enlightenment brings, the interaction, the whole interaction of this collective network. And the fifth is, of course, this is where the thyroid gland is. This is the one that enables you to generate states, moods. No one can be into a state of samadhi unless first develops the mood of samadhi. This, we call it kind of like the medicine towards depression, because here we have the thyroid gland, and with this gland we can generate any hormone we need. And if we have harmony in the management of this hormone, we can be at bliss and at peace under any circumstances. It's not that we will have exception of or towards suffering, but we will have the ability to generate the right hormone to face the challenges that life is bringing onto us. And of course, this is what lights up the whole process of integrating the five as one. And then, of course, the six then brings kind of like the big picture. The seventh is actually that we don't work too much in our lineage unless someone is about to leave the body, unless someone is kind of like dying, because this is someone that, this one is when we take birth, this one is a little bit open. It takes like 2 years to close, right? It should remain closed. You should not play around with this seventh chakra, unless you're about to die, because this is kind of like a bridge towards I won't say the other side, towards the prior side, previous side.
Yeah, I'm going to recommend whoever's watching this to just like pause now and just kind of reflect on a few of those things. Maybe go back and rewatch some of that, because that was some really, really insightful words right there. Thank you so much, Andrei. So you've been a father for a little while, which is a beautiful thing. Will you speak about raising children in a conscious way and what it's been like in this modern world that we've found ourselves in, as well as consistently creating a conscious and loving relationship with your partner?
Well, this is when the whole skeptical thing just really hits, like when you engage into a spiritual practice, call it yoga, call it whatever, call it a religion, that's what I just really advise people to really be always skeptical. And being a father and having a 16-year old relationship with my wife is what really has brought like this realization over these practices that I have done for many years and that I have received from the yoga tradition. Is when you really put into practice, okay, let me see if all these not rules but principles, living principles, really work in real life. So of course, with partnership, it's something that is so key, because our partners are a reflection of ourselves, and this is kind of like the definition of the spiritual process of partnership. Our partners enable us to be a deep mirror of our own self. If there is something that we don't like in our partners, it's because we have that, and the partners it help us to reflect on that. So it's an amazing way to go deeper into the self work and to the self realization and to the self purification. And purification, when I say purification, I'm not talking about like purifying for what is wrong, but purifying for things that doesn't sit with the harmony of yourself. So partnership definitely is something that is there, taking you from the inner world into the outer world, and seeing if the development that you think that you are achieving in your inner world is really showing up and into the material actual world. And then fatherhood is so beautiful, because that's when you really have the chance to see, like, let me see if these principles are really key and are real in developing someone that is into a state of more balance and harmony in life. And you have to have lots of courage, because society, we don't realize how much pressure society put into us. There are so many moral principles that, forgive me the word, but it's just bullshit. Like pride. Pride is, we see it in the spirituality and in the Tibetan tradition specifically, how pride is the seat of all evil. From pride comes judgment, from judgment discrimination, friction, conflict, violence. We see it in the collective thing, like patriotism. They say like, oh, we need to, we need to love our nation so that we can go and kill the other one, right? It's like it's so different when instead of pride you have the whole sense of humbleness. Humbleness enables you to see beyond beyond the limit of your skin, beyond the limit of your nation, beyond the limit of your particular configuration. And then when growing up kids, that's what I said, it requires lots of courage, because you feel so much pressure, what's right, what's wrong, you have to do this, you should not be this, the official version is to do this, all this pushing you also to induce into your kids these fake values. Like I have like this practice, for example, raising our kids, I never say to my kids like, oh, I'm proud of you, I try to be very sincere. Oh, like you make me so happy by doing this, or I admire you so much because you did this, but I try to eliminate, for example, the whole thing of pride and proud, and then you see how they are, like to there's goodness in human nature. They said that the humans are evil by nature. It's not true. When we see a newborn, it's just goodness, it's just love. So all we need to do is just to harvest this natural goodness of humanity. But we have to have lots of courage, because we have to go against and we have to face the official version. And I encourage all mothers, all fathers that are here sharing with us, like really trust in your own values, trust in your heart, and most important, see your kids as what they are, good human beings, and try to harvest this natural goodness that they have, with whatever principles you have. Of course, this is where I tell you, that I've been testing the principles of this approach to the yoga tradition, because there are many yogas, be careful, okay? But and I have the principles of the yoga, ahimsa, non-friction. Non-friction is amazing, because non-friction is not that prevents conflict, but also in the middle of conflict, by applying non-friction is how you start to reach a point of reconciliation. So it's so important, because of course with the kids there might be so much friction, but having the awareness towards non-friction relationship is kind of like the key. Then satya, which they translate as truth, I translate as reality, what's real, what's not real. Mm-hmm. And then that's when you have to have lots of courage. If you see that you are pushing your kid to do something that is not real, like, then you have to be sincere, you have to be authentic, and really honor what's real. And even if it might seem from an ethical point of view, from a moral point of view, that is not right to, for example, acknowledge this or to teach this to the kid, because it is part of reality, you have to teach it, you have to show it. We have to erase the taboo from how we raise our kids. We have to really trust in reality, and trust that if we show reality to them, this is the best way how we can prepare them for what comes ahead. And then respect is the other value. The other value is generosity. Just with the kids, just don't just try it a little bit harder. Put some awareness, put some time onto them. Don't just go the easy way. And the last one, which is funny because it's brahmacharya, what they often call as celibacy, has nothing to do with celibacy. It's always pausing to see if you can find a better way, a more refined way with the kids. I think refinement is key in the way how we educate kids. It's not about black and white. How you refine your ways with the kids is all about quality. How you can improve the quality of how you're raising the kids. And it's been 8 years with the older one, 4 years with the little one, and so far so good. I have to say, so far so good. I see that they are growing up, and I've been able to play my part in protecting their natural goodness. Humans, we are good by nature, and with kids, it's an amazing opportunity. The only way how we're going to transform the world, to me, the hope is with kids. But we have to protect their natural goodness and to forget about all these fake moral values.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, I definitely also believe that it starts with the children, and that natural love that we are all brought into this world with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you alluded to something a little earlier, one of the Yoga Sutras. Can you explain the meaning of what to me, it's one of the core of the sutras, which is the second sutra. And why is this important? What is it and why is this important?
Well, the sutras are these, it's kind of like 195 little phrases that kind of like expose what yoga is all about. Funny enough, as part of these 195, just 3.5 of them talk about asana. But even though that is just 3 of them, in these 3.5, they expose all that you need to know about asana. So you don't need to know anatomy. If you're going to the dentist, make sure that your dentist knows about anatomy. But your yoga teacher, they don't need to know about anatomy. They need to know about these three sutras. But this second one is so interesting because like the first one is just kind of like it's just kind of like the opening that says like now the exposition of the yoga begins. And then the second one is the actual definition, and then the rest of the sutras is just kind of like explaining this second sutra. It's kind of like exposing more and developing the explanation, the exposition of this second sutra, which is the definition of sutra, and is yogas chipti vritti nirodha. So for you fellows, you already know you have already heard my English, so it's all messed up with all my Spanish English, and then don't even listen to my Sanskrit because of you. But the beautiful thing about this Sanskrit is about the vibration. It doesn't matter if you pronounce it right or wrong. It's all about vibration. And that's why we like to also, like expose it and present it into the vibration. Yogas chipti vritti nirodha, which is, and the Sanskrit is a language that is a vibratory language. It's not based on meaning like our languages. Like at some point, red, yes, we might have some German root or some Latin root, whatever, right? But at some point, it was just like arbitrary. They just put it like that. But the Sanskrit is not like that. It's a vibratory language. So, for example, the tree, if you can kind of like feel the vibration of the tree and you put it into a device that you can produce sound out of that vibration, it will be bruksh, bruksh. That's the vibration of a tree. So then they call tree briksh because that's the vibration of the tree. So that's why it's so difficult to find kind of like a translation into the Sanskrit. So yogas chipti vritti nirodha, you cannot just have just one way of presenting this. You have to always go around. So to me, the one that I found more accurate based on the practice and the experience that the practice provides you with is yoga is the process of calming the mind. It's kind of like the yoga starts by bringing the mind into calmness. So that's kind of like the main thing. Everything that will happen, everything that will arise from this practice will arise in the moment that you start to bring your mind into calmness. And again, like we think that the brain has so many capacities, and of course they have so many capacities, right? But the most amazing capacity of the mind is when the mind is calm, because that's when the mind can connect to consciousness. And when you connect to consciousness, that's when you can not know about reality, is when you can perceive and see reality the way it is. In the moment that you define the reality, you are just reducing reality. You are just limiting reality. So that's why the yoga is all about keeping it keep it in the state of contemplation. And in order to contemplate with awareness, your mind has to be calm. That's the beginning of the whole yoga, and that's the main center. And then the rest of the practice just goes all around this principle, all around this center.
It all starts with a calm mind.
Exactly.
So a couple more questions to wrap up here with. One that I relate to quite a bit, and it's something that I talk to patients about pretty much daily. Do you feel that the food we eat impacts more than just our physical body?
Seth, of course, in the yoga practice, I've been so hardcore also on experimenting with diet. But I will say that it's not just the food we eat, it's how we eat the food we eat. like I'm going to be totally sincere with you, and this might be my first declaration and to Dharma, that I'm not vegetarian any longer. Um, in the practice of vegetarianism, eh, because of the practices of the yoga practices, because you try to practice ahimsa, which is, they call it non-violence. But I mean, if you have to stop the violence, it might be already too late. So actually, ahimsa, if you go to the really core vibration of ahimsa, is about non-friction. If you can prevent friction, then you can prevent conflict, and then of course, then you can prevent violence. And if you're in the middle of the violence and you apply non-friction, then you might find a way to reconcile and to come out of the violence. So it's very interesting because, of course, I was vegetarian for so many years until I started going to Japan, and I start to interact with the slow movement, the slow life movement there, and I had the fortune to also have the guidance of Satish Kumar, which is, he was a Jainist monk, which is these monks that they go barefoot, they never walk at night, they even use a mask, a face mask, to prevent, not to prevent from getting viruses, but to prevent from killing viruses. So they are the most hardcore of all the monks, right? But now he's the director of the Schumacher College, which is a college of biological sciences, teaching the biologists that the earth is a living organism, and that how to interact with earth, and not just how to produce out of earth, right? So, and all he teaches is Vedanta and yoga and sutras, and these principles, yama niyama, for those of you who know the terms. But how you integrate this into taking care of our environment. Something that beautiful that Satish says is that, we think that the world is ruled by economy, and that's why we're destroying the world. But it's not true, because the sad thing is, like, we haven't even used or developed economy. Ecos, as you may know, is hum, and nomi is like the management over hum. So how you manage hum, how you preserve hum. So economy is about preserving the planet, preserving nature. That's what real economy should be. The world is ruled by financial, by greed, by money, but not by economy. We need economy. We need to develop real economy. And he says like, we need to take care of our home. And then it's so beautiful because, of course, after so many years that he was also a vegan, now he just walked the path of like non-harming the earth. Because if you are not eating animals, but you are eating tofu in the Swiss Alps, where there are like lots of milk, like there's plastic on this tofu. The tofu has to travel from certain part, to the mountains in the Swiss Alps. So you are harming the earth. So you're not protecting the animals. You're killing the mother of the animals, and you're killing the mother of all of us. So they developed this vision of the slow life. And it's about, like, of course, about being local, right? And how you eat and how you interact. So, for example, they don't ever buy anything in a supermarket. If they are going to eat meat, they go to the guy who killed the cattle. If they're going to eat chicken, they go to the farmer who grow the chicken, and they get it firsthand. So of course that takes a lot, that's why they call it a slow, because you cannot just go to the fast food or the supermarket and get it, So you put energy, and then you're exchanging, and also in the economy, in the laws of economy, you're just giving the money to the farmer who put her life to grow up that chicken. So there's interaction of life. He gave life to that chicken, so now this chicken is giving something to that farmer, to the family of this farmer. And it was so beautiful, to learn all these things from Satish. And then I realized, like, oh my goodness, I thought that I was practicing ahimsa by being vegan, and I've been doing nothing. Actually, I was a terrorist, a vegan terrorist. And then it was so beautiful, the first time that I went back to eating animal, but in this approach, to see how, like, this animal was like, I was practicing ahimsa for the first time ever, like the life of this animal was becoming part of my life. And then I was also assisting the farmer who really put all his life in growing up this animal. And it's kind of like the medicine that we need in this world to heal. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like, come on, you know, like while we were in the lockdowns, supposedly protecting life by closing our nostrils, by not breathing properly, by forcing our kids not to breathe. You know the damage in the brain when you put a 2-year-old for 3 years to block their nostrils and not breathing properly. We were not saving life. We were killing the ones that were more alive and that we have to protect. We send our kids, our soldiers, to kill other kids just to protect our nation. And how come we were not sending the healthy people to the schools, the healthy teachers to the schools, to put a little bit of risk, 2% of risk, to protect the development of the kids?
Mm-hmm.
So we have everything like on upside down. But when we start to have this kind of like healing, this is the kind of vision that we need. And it starts with food, because we all need to eat, but it's not just what we eat, it's how we eat it, from who we're eating. And then while we were in the lockdowns, you know, for first time, 5 people were centa billionaires. Five people that were able to gather to have more than $100 billion. And who were these people? The farmers, the teachers, the people that are there every day working really hard. They were at their offices in receiving the income from the virtual world, which means non-real world. What is artificial intelligence? Is to create robots that can behave like a human, or perhaps is to make all the humans behave like robots. I think that's what artificial intelligence is all about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting because this way of relating to food and how we eat and where are we getting the food, I think is the development of the real economy. And the development of a real economy is what can heal this world, heal our souls, heal also our physical body, you know, because of course the quality of the food is going to be different, how you eat the food, because of course you're going to eat with gratitude, and you're going to generate and produce more life, even when you're eating something that is dead.
Mm-hmm.
It's not dead, because you're inviting this animal to be part of your life, and you do it in a way that is honoring that life and resurrecting that life as part of yourselves. But of course, you cannot do this if you go to McDonald's. You cannot do this if you go to fast food. You cannot do this if you just go to the supermarket, and just because you pay a few dollars, you think that you're giving a real exchange. This is fake. This is not. There's no real exchange. We need to resurrect the real exchange in our life. We need to value and to respect humanity and human life and animal life and plant life. And the way we respect that is by a real exchange, is by developing a real economy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very well said. There's a lot in there. The thing that really stood out to me, and you said it towards the end, is the quality of these things. It's the quality of the connections, whether it's how we eat, what we eat, and how we got it. The quality of those connections are just the essence of what's most important.
Exactly.
So beautiful. Thank you for that. So last question, and then we'll wrap up. When are you going to start teaching more in South Florida?
Well, you know, I'm the only one in my family that lives here down in South America. My siblings, my parents, all live in the States. So, and my parents, they live in South Florida. So for sure I'll be there, going there. I started going there last year. For sure I'll be there every summer. You know, that's where we spend the summer with the kids, so that they have the chance to get in touch with the grandparents. But you know, I was very happy, you know, because I think it's you know, Miami. Of course, since when I was a kid, I've been interacting with Miami and South Florida, and it's so beautiful to see the transformation, you know, like, and I think it's something is happening there. I think it could be a good place to start planting a different seed, and then to move it up north. So yeah, I'm hoping that I'll be able to go there more often, more than once a year. So yeah, I'm planning to start, going at least 3 times per year and doing something there. Of course, I also go to different places. I go to um, um, California. I love going to all the indigenous areas of the states, Arizona. Really looking for my chance to get into Montana and all these places that I haven't explored yet. So yeah, and growing up in Colombia gave me the chance to get in touch with the native indigenous traditions of the Americans. Please do not forget that we are one country. Hello, hello. So the Americas, but of course, it was tough for me as a kid, growing up away from my land, so from the land that gave me birth. And when I go to New England, it's so funny, I go sometimes to teach to Nantucket, and it's so funny, of course, with this package that I hold, and this color of my skin, and this heavy accent. They when they realize that I'm from Massachusetts, I'm like, hey, come on, can you tell that I'm from here? But this land for me, it's so New England land to me is just kind of like there's no place like fall in Massachusetts and in these lands. So yeah, I'm hoping I can have my chance there to also recover all my years that I've been craving my chance to step in the sacred land of the north of the Americas.
Well, I'm selfishly looking forward to it, and you have friends here, so whatever we can do to help.
And thank you so much for this time sharing. It's not that Andre is a whatever guru or whatever enlightened being. No, it's just someone that feels like you guys. It's someone that really wants this world to change, and that really wants these United States to be united again, to come together again. I was raised also. I spent many of my youthful years in Texas. Different parts of the country. So I hold so much love for the land, and thank you for this opportunity to give some love back to you fellows. And please, let's come together again. We are the great nation because we're different, because there are lots of diversity, and let's come together and let's see that in every side and in every different perspective, as awkward and as different as radical different that might seem to yours, there's value. And if we put it together, we're gonna keep growing up our abundant generosity for all.
Absolutely. So, how can people get in touch with you? Do you have? I know you have different projects online. You travel all over the place, but how can people follow you? How can people meet you? How can people learn from you?
Like since when I was born, I felt like I was already old, and I really enjoy living my life as my old fellow already. So I'm very bad with social media. I tried my best with the virtual classes during the lockdowns and so on. There's some of that in a YouTube channel, ANDREI RAM. There's also an Instagram, ANDREI RAM. I'm not there too often, but once in a while. But anyways, it's linked to a website, very old-fashioned website that I need to update somehow. Is that you will find the schedule there, and I think it's time also to come together. Something that I offer is just to bring people together, and I'm kind of like the connector of a beautiful international family. So that's why I really enjoy doing different retreats at different parts of the world. You'll see, I always joke, like the first, you will have to pay for accommodation just on the first retreat. On the second one, you won't, because you will already have friends at that different place of the world. And it's so beautiful, we go all around the world, and we find people, that they are so similar to us, even though that they were growing a different culture, different part of the world. But when you have the chance to really experience the soul to soul connection, it's so beautiful, because then we turn down the walls of conflict, and we realize that deep within we're humans and we're just one family and we're just one nation, and that there's just one country, and that's the country of Earth. So I invite you all to just check it out in the Instagram or in the webpage, not to learn from Andrei, but to come together and to meet wonderful people all around the world, and also to let us get to know the beauty of yourself, because once again, humans, we all are good by nature and we all are loving by nature, and I'm dying to get to know you guys that I don't know yet.
Beautiful. And what's the website?
The website is innerparadise.org.
Innerparadise.org. Beautiful.
.com is .org.
Gotcha. So, all right. Thank you. And everybody watching, I appreciate you guys spending some time with us. As always, your comments, feedback, and suggestions are always welcome. So thank you for watching this episode of The Art of Mindful Medicine with myself, Dr. Seth Gilson, and ANDREI RAM. Please click all those buttons below to like, subscribe, and share this episode far and wide, because ANDREI wants to get to know you, and you definitely want to get to know him. You can see all past and future episodes on this YouTube channel, The Art of Mindful Medicine, and my website, www.mindful.doctor. And as always, I like to end things with a quote. This is from a great mind, Viktor Frankl. And he once said, "Between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." So something to think about. Thank you guys again. Andrei, thank you so much. It's been wonderful to speak with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again.
Thank you for being a real doctor.
Thank you for that.